All right. I'd like to call this open meeting of the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee to order on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025 at 6:32 p.m. And I also want to thank everybody for being flexible given the rescheduling of this meeting. So thank you very much. At this time, I just want to let you know we have one remote member, Joan Frank. Joan, you can hear me, correct?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, I will open up the floor to audience sharing. Not hearing any audience sharing. I will be looking, we'll move on to action on minutes. I'm looking to release the open meeting minutes or approve the open meeting minutes of December 18th, 2024.
So moved.
Moved by Paul, second by John. Any discussion? All right. We will, not hearing any discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. We'll start with Matt.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Joan.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to educational policy. There is none at this time. Moving on to new business, legislative update.
So in your packet, I did include legislative priorities, which center on 4 areas. The first is the Massachusetts School Building Authority, lifting the cap. It uses to fund projects. The second is Student Opportunity Act and minimum aid. So as we look at our budgets, making sure that we advocate for the maximum amount of student aid for our district. The third is special education circuit breaker, so funding special education placements. And then lastly, student transportation reimbursement. So we'll use this information to generate letters to our state senators and legislatures. And we, for Northborough and Southborough, we also added school transportation as another 5th area to advocate for. So these are not new. These are traditional priorities for the school committee. The governor did release the state budget, the first version, first draft. So we did get some good news in terms of transportation reimbursement. In the governor's budget, it's funded at 94%. Minimum local aid was funded at $75 as a starting point. Typically it's $25 or $30, so that's a better place than typically the governor's budget starts at. And then in terms of special education circuit breaker, we're still analyzing what to expect in terms of funding based on the governor's budget. Typically that's the floor, and the budget's only increase in terms of aid to education from the governor's point. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Paul?
Transportation, you said it was funded at 95%?
Yes.
Does everybody get that?
Any regional?
Right.
So yes.
But so it doesn't vary by district?
Correct.
Okay, that's good.
And this year, 84% is our funding rate. And the goal was always 100%. So this is the closest we have been in terms of funding.
And just to clarify, is that our actual cost? So it's 94% of our actual cost?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Science Department presentation.
Great, so I'm going to bring up Elisa Drake. She's our Science Department Chair, and she's going to join me up next to Madison to give her presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you tonight. I'm Elisa Drake, the new Science Department Chair at Algonquin. And I'd like to give you an update on the status of our department this year and previous couple of years. So we have ongoing items that we're looking at, our focus this year is data analysis. We are always using our standardized scores as well as common assessment scores to inform our instruction. We are working to expand access to our courses. We had a call for allowing 10th graders the opportunity to take more of our elective courses, so we'll be able to open that up in astronomy and innovations for next year. Continuing our professional development, we have the district-wide initiative with Universal Design for Learning, and we have been working together as a science department to share ideas of how to implement this effectively in classrooms. A school initiative is artificial intelligence, and as a department, we are brainstorming ways to implement this in the classroom most effectively. Something that really excites us is having students generate practice problems in their chemistry and physics courses, and eventually we'd also like to incorporate that into the genetics aspect of biology. So I'll take you now through our 3 core disciplines, and then we'll move on to electives and some of the extracurriculars that we have to offer. We'll start with biology. We currently have 6 teachers working in this department: Christina Connolly, myself, Courtney Gilpin, Brian Kelly, Lori Mott, and Christine Thompson. We have a couple of key focuses with this group. We are always incorporating new labs. We had a small group of our biology teachers attend a professional development workshop last year. It was called 20 in 20, where teachers learned about 20 different activities that they can perform in under 20 minutes. Hands-on activities that were just quick and easy and effective in the classroom. 2 things that they brought back from that workshop were algae beads and yeast spheres, and that's been a fun thing to incorporate into our lab sciences. We have a new PCR machine that we were able to purchase this year, as well as CRISPR labs, so that is some fun cutting-edge technology that we can use in our AP courses, and potentially biotechnology as well. In November, Lori Mott and Brian Kelly gave a fantastic professional development workshop with the life science teachers, and they talked to us about how we can use inclusive language, reformat diagrams to cover our meiosis, our genetics units, and our body system units, so that we are making sure that all students feel like they have a place in the classroom. And I also wanted to throw out there that we have an exciting update. Dr. Christine Thompson was accepted into a fellowship with Amgen Biotech, and she's going to be working with teachers internationally to advance curriculum resources for biotechnology. And so we look forward to seeing what she brings back to us from that work. You can see some of our students working in the lab. For chemistry, we have 4 teachers currently: Catherine Burkett, Josh Colson, Emma Travassos, and Amy Selby. The group is working to revamp their scope and sequence. So this is something that's ongoing always in science, but this is a major focus for this group this year. They're really looking into how they can best tell the story of chemistry. And there have been some great discussions there. They also are reviving a unit on thermodynamics that was once part of the curriculum, sort of left, and then they've purchased some new lab materials that will make that more fun and exciting for students. So that is something we're bringing back in the spring, and I look forward to seeing that. For physics, our teachers are currently Dan Welty, Kevin Hausman, Maria Homburg, Nate Largess, and Ken Wadman. And they also always have something fun going on. Hands-on experiences are a consistent part of this coursework. You can see the roller coaster from one of the physics labs behind me. It's a pretty classic one. Students are given a lot of opportunities to demonstrate how they are understanding the content. They're getting to be creative. They're showing us what they understand. With the AP Physics C course, we are reworking that for next year. We are actually expanding it, basically reorganizing it for a couple of reasons. There's been a reorganization of the exam by the College Board. to separate the two exams, and also our teachers were voicing that they needed a little more lab time to make a better experience for the students. So we are offering AP Physics C Mechanics in the fall semester, and then we will offer Electricity and Magnetism in the spring. We think this will open up and give more options to students because students can take one or both courses. We anticipate that most will take both, but they will have the opportunity to just opt in for one and then take other elective courses if they'd like. There they are. And then, of course, we have a diverse selection of high-quality elective courses in our department. These are equipping students with skills that they will use in the future. One thing I'd like to point out that's new for 2025 is that in the spring semester, we will have a new course at Algonquin called Environmental Humanities. This is going to be a co-taught course. We have biology teacher Christy Connolly working with English teacher Seth Sarnecki to bring a totally unique experience to our students. This is something that will combine literature and science, and the teachers will bounce back and forth between each other, sort of one teacher leading students in some reading, and then the other teacher being able to dive in quickly into the scientific concept. We think it's going to be a more approachable science-based course for certain students where you don't have the hardcore lab component, and so we're very excited to see this. And then I thought I'd just touch base on some of the wonderful clubs that are running this year. We have 5 very solid clubs running. We'll start with Science National Honor Society, which has been run by Dr. Christine Thompson. We have 77 members that were inducted into this group and are attending this year. They do a wonderful job with peer tutoring. They're before school and after school on Thursdays. They are in science classrooms helping teachers prep labs, break down, clean up. The stuff they've done for me personally this year is amazing, and I know everybody else is so appreciative. They also host presenters. They had Dr. Spratt from Clark University, who spoke to students about his journey to becoming a researcher and a professor. So great work there. Science Olympiad is run by Ken Wadman and Nate Largess. We have about 60 students who are participating in this club. They're after school every Friday, which is amazing to see. The halls are busy, the classroom is full, the kids are engaged, they know what they need to do to solve different problems. They have their competition in the spring, and it's a great club. HOSA, Health Occupation Students of America. This is run by Lori Mott. There's about 45 students this year. They are always reviewing case studies. They hosted a blood drive that was very successful in March. They collected about 51 units of blood, which will help about 150 patients. They were Narcan trained in December. I believe the CPR training already happened a week or 2 ago, and they have a health fair planned for 2025. They also have guest speakers every year, which is wonderful to see. Here they are with their cute little crowns where they're sharing what they are interested in exploring in the medical field. Science Research Club, this is another club run by Amy Selby. These students are just exploring topics of choice in biology, chemistry, and physics. They had a presenter in March, Dr. Hua, who spoke to them about type 2 diabetes research. And then this year's focus is a little different. They are focusing on crafting resumes. A lot of our students are interested in internships in the science field. These are particularly challenging to obtain since things are just highly technical in the lab and in a lot of these engineering internships, but the kids are still trying their best there, so it's wonderful to see. Here they are with their presenter. And then WISE, our WISE group, Women in Science and Engineering. This is run by Maria Homburg. Up to 40 students a week are participating in this. They are looking to attract and retain girls and women in STEM careers. They're conducting activities after school. They are creating materials to reach out to younger students to inspire them in the sciences. There they are. And just to wrap things up, in general, our students are inspired to get involved in things. They are inspired to recycle. We've seen a small group of students put together a recycling program with Trex Decking. We had a group that set up a composting program with Black Earth Compost. The Green Earth Club that was running previously, and SNHS, they worked to remove invasive species around the school property. And then people are getting involved and they're interning. They are not only signing up for electives and participating in clubs, but they're also finding summer internships. I want to also just sort of give a shout out to Michelle Kalin's Career Exploration Program, which had a number of students specifically intern in fields related to science. She was a great help with that. We hope to continue that relationship. And then we are consistently seeing students major in STEM fields. They are finding a lot of success at the college level, and they come back and tell us they were very well prepared by our science program. So that's that. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
Ms. Green.
let me know if you have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Hello,
Hi.
thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I am a STEM girl with quite a bit of arts in there too, but very much live a life in research. And I'm wondering how much of your assessments are memory-based?
Well, I would say a fair amount. I think that to work in a field that is as highly technical as science is, you have to have a working memory to, you have to have memorization and a working memory of the concepts in order to effectively communicate in the field. So a fair amount of them, but we also mix it up with application style assessments as
Okay,
well.
so you're distinguishing those things that you need to have as working knowledge and assessing those and less on other aspects of learning, would you say?
Could you say the
Are
question
you
again?
distinguishing those things that have to be learned, that have to be walking knowledge, and assessing that accordingly versus other information that could be referenced, could be looked up?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
And how are you managing the stress for your students with these high expectations?
Yeah, so I think our biology team does a really good job of helping students learn study techniques. We find that the transition to high school for science is challenging because of the memorization piece, but we work through active study techniques and modeling effective ways for students to gain the knowledge so that they can feel more comfortable and balance their stress.
Any other questions? I guess I would just make a comment. I think it's great that it's great to hear that you were able to get a PCR thermal cycler. I think that's great, and I think that probably plays in pretty well to the notion of the idea that internships, especially in the science area, are highly technical. And I guess my question, to kind of piggyback on the acquisition of doing PCR, which is, although not considered cutting edge, still a standard laboratory technique in any kind of genetic engineering lab or biology lab. The fact that you guys are incorporating CRISPR labs is incredible. That is bleeding edge research. Have you heard any feedback from any of the companies that students have sought internships at as to the types of equipment and the types of skills that they would want to see in those students? And is there anything that we could do to make sure those students have those skills? So to piggyback a little bit again on what Kathleen said, was this notion that you have to have a working knowledge of, so for example, if you're doing biology, understanding what the terminology is, understanding what the technical use of the equipment is, or in chemistry, understanding what like naming conventions and naming systems are, becomes really important, because if somebody's going to have somebody as an intern in the lab, they don't want to have to explain all these things. So just to kind of reiterate what I'm saying, have you found that they're saying, hey, we would like students that are able to do this? And if you have heard that, is there anything we can do to make sure students are able to do that?
I have not personally heard that yet. I think I'm a little too new, and
I think I can jump in. I think it's not so much whether or not our students have the knowledge, it's that they don't have the credentials. So as I understand it, labs are really looking for college educated or college enrolled students. I think there's just, frankly, just so much liability for somebody to do something incorrectly in a lab and then jeopardize something about the lab's work, to allow, I think, the risk reward calculation for a lab is just, it's not proving to be valuable enough at this point for labs to allow high school students to intern, and we're finding greater success getting our foot in the door at other places where that's not the case. So we have 11 students starting internships on Monday. That's the first time we've had students doing out in the community internships during the school year. It's the first time we've ever had that. We had some in the summer, but this is the first time we're doing that. None of them are in labs, so that I think will be, we're gonna try to kind of punch through the goal line on that at some point, but it's not happened yet.
Thank you very much for all you and your department do for these students. Thank you.
Could I just ask one?
yeah.
So just provide you with an opportunity to speak to, is there anything you want us to know in terms of resources that you or the team need?
You know, I think we have solid staffing at this point. We'd like to retain our numbers if possible to give students the best opportunity or the best experience possible. I think our budget allows us to perform these technical labs, but also run high quality courses all around as well. We'd always take more. But yeah,
Well, I mean,
we feel well
you can take
supported.
more, but like specifically, like what can't you, if you want more, like what is it that you would want to do?
Well,
that if you had more resources?
I'm thinking about the
you could do?
WISE Club. They potentially could use some funding to do more. Right now, to be perfectly honest, it's the advisor who's using her own funds to run a lot of that and provide the materials. We could always expand additional lab work. There's always more. We could find things. I don't have a specific agenda item at this point in time, but give me some time. I could come back to you.
I would advise you, if there are teachers in this community that are using their own resources to supplement the activities that they're passionate about, then you should find a way to get those numbers onto these spreadsheets so we understand what they're doing.
I agree. Thank you. Yeah.
Just have a comment getting back to the internship discussion. I think you're right, Sean, that, you know, it's hard to picture a high school kid getting an internship in a lab. On the other hand, what about some sort of project-based work they could be doing? I know we've talked in the past about, especially senior year, you know, like capstone projects, sorts of things that would give kids a leg up as they're freshmen in college, because even freshmen in college have a hard time getting internships a lot of times. So, you know, I'm just thinking if we could offer something like that, that would give them a leg up down the road, you know, that might be worth looking into.
That's a good idea.
I will say, you know, thinking of what you were saying earlier, they might not be getting internships, but what we are doing by providing the high quality lab experience is giving them, empowering students to feel as if they can ask to work alongside professors right away when they end up at college. You know, a lot of students don't know that those opportunities are out there, but our students have the technical skills and they have the knowledge where they could jump in freshman, sophomore year and start working in those lab experiences.
Sean?
Of course, I forgot the title of the position, but we funded a position a year or so ago for these internships, whatever that's.
That was Michelle.
Michelle, yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, I you know, as that position grows, I can imagine like looking about the comment about developing resumes. I think that's, you know, hopefully the areas where she'll be working with students and you know, they might not even know like that club to ask her for that support, but and I think putting these things on her radar about my son did an internship his senior year at an environmental science place down here. Like it's once word grows and opportunity, I think. But I think it'll take some time. 11 internships right now is incredible. So it's nice to hear that's growing, and and there's a desire to do more, so.
Yeah, Kevin?
How much would the Wise Club deserve to have to do their work?
Yeah, and we can talk about how much you need, because I'm sure we can
And
find.
I had said that
We
to
can-
her as well.
We will be
but-
happy to support.
We can talk and I'll
Yeah.
connect with
Yes.
Becky and Brady.
Yeah.
That would be lovely,
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, the other piece I would add is that, you know, the work, bringing in experts to speak with our students is really important, to share their experience, but also inviting people in the field to come in and do experiments and labs with our students. So maybe we can't send kids into high complexity labs, but we definitely can bring scientists into our labs to really help facilitate and facilitate the learning that's taking place. So I think there are ways we can bring expertise to kids. Many organizations require volunteer opportunities, so I think it's something we can work with Michelle Kalin and see if that's an opportunity we can expand.
Sounds good.
And I just wanted to add that I'm really appreciative that Elisa also has joined us in our middle school work, where we're looking at new curriculum resources in science, and she has been a consistent part of that committee to help us have that vertical alignment as our middle school students from both Northborough and Southborough move to the high school. So we're really grateful for her participation and expertise.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for
Thanks your
having
time.
me.
Thank you. Elisa's off to a great start as our department head, taking over for Lori Zanini from last year. So well done, Elisa. Nicely done.
All right, the next item on the agenda is transportation bid discussion.
So at the last joint school committee meeting, we presented the current bid specifications. We had two bids, as you know, one from NRT and the second from First Student. Having rejected the bids, we are now in the process of revising those bids to modify the criteria to hopefully get a more cost-effective price for transportation. So we've reached out to NRT, we've reached out to First. We are drafting the new procurement documents to go out to bid, and hopefully in the next week or two, those will be out, and we'll get new data to bring back to the committee to make a decision on transportation. I think it continues to be a difficult labor market. Transportation is a difficult market in general. We're not seeing more than, districts are not seeing more than two bidders, and if they're fortunate, they have two bidders. So I think from our colleagues that we've had conversations with, what we're seeing is what they're seeing as well.
Can I just ask that as we're getting these new bids, as we're preparing them, we're considering quality. So one of the things that I think that what I took from the combined school committee, is this appropriate to talk about this?
Yeah.
What I took from that meeting overall was that you and your team went to bid in order to meet sort of the demands of the community around quality overall, from quality of service, et cetera. That bid came back rather high, and the committees agreed to send back. I just want to make sure that as you go back and do the bids over, that the committees are very well aware of what quality degradations are going to happen before you put them in, because we don't want to get into another situation where perhaps people aren't 100% understanding as to what quality we're going to get.
Yeah, and to be clear, the two specifications we're changing in the bid document. The first really is age of bus. So we're working with a consultant to say, okay, what is the age of a bus? And the second area is the number of substitute drivers.
Understood.
Those are the two. We feel like with those two changes, working with our transportation consultant, I think we can meet the needs of the quality with these two modifications. There are many other
Yeah.
quality pieces in the document that we're not changing.
Great.
Any
I
other-
think, can I just
Yeah.
add one point? The question is, will the increased cost result in better quality? So we believe we wrote the bid documents for better quality. And now we're questioning whether it's NRT or first student for that 45% increase for NRT or 50% increase and the 90% increase from first student. Are we gonna see that level of quality as a result of the increased costs?
For clarification, you're looking for less old buses and less substitutes in this revision?
Yes, so there were 4 dedicated substitute drivers in the former bid that we went out.
Mhm.
That was feedback that we received that substantially increased the cost. And the second was the age of the buses. So we asked for the age of the bus to be no more than 5 years or 60,000 miles. And that was also a factor in terms of cost. So now what we're trying to look at is, at what point do buses become unreliable? Is it 6 years, 100,000 miles? Is it 7 years, 120,000 miles? And really hit that, that point where we're getting an efficient price per bus without, more charges than we should have.
But the contract is looking to establish a steady pool of drivers.
Correct. So currently, we have substitute drivers in the current bid contract that we experience today, but they're not dedicated to us. So there might be 3 substitutes who are shared amongst many districts.
Mhm.
So we're looking for dedicated substitute drivers just for North Row, South Row, and the region.
Sorry, what about the dispatch? Did we?
And a
just-
dedicated dispatch person.
Keep that?
Yeah, that is not
Okay.
changing.
Okay.
On the dedicated subs, how does that work? I mean, are those people getting paid whether they're driving or not, or?
Correct.
Uh,
So we had 4 dedicated substitute drivers. We've looked at our data around what's the daily average of absence for bus drivers, and it ranges between 2 to 3. I mean, obviously there are outliers. There's some days where there's 0 and some days there are 5, but we feel like 2 is a good number to land on.
And I think we're also thinking about that too as like an alternate, like we did with the technology and the other bid, where we could request pricing for what a substitute driver would be. And based off of that data, we can then make a decision whether we want to add that to the contract and if we want to add 1 or if we want to add 2, but at least we'll have that data up front.
And regardless, if we had 0 subs dedicated to North Row and South Row, the contract requires the contractor to provide drivers every day for 32 buses. So it's there. It's just, how do we hold the contractors accountable for making sure we have 32 drivers every day?
We make them accountable by paying them more?
That's part of the question. Like, we haven't had consistent substitute drivers. Of the pool that they have, sometimes we have to double up buses because they don't have drivers. And there's penalties that we charge, but the reality is, on any given day, we can be short a driver or 2 because there's not enough substitute drivers, or they're working in other districts. This would provide a little more accountability in terms of 2 dedicated drivers just for us.
I could see Keith behind the wheel.
But it's adding a cost to our contract, yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thanks for the update. All right, next, our new business is approval of grants and donations.
Sean, do you want to run? through
Sure,
these?
yeah, so we have four, this is maybe my favorite part of these meetings, thanking our supporters out there in our community. So the first one's a big number item. The Northborough Youth Basketball Association has offered to provide funds to bring a drug and alcohol speaker, Chris Herron, who's well known in the area. He played for the Celtics, among other NBA teams, and he also is a product of Massachusetts. They would like to fund his coming out to do a school-wide assembly. So that's a $5,000 cost that we would gladly accept, and we have planned an event with Mr. Herron. You want me to go through all four and then?
Please.
Okay. The second one you see there is a donation from Wegmans in the amount of $200 to Gonk Stage, which is our theater program, to cover the cost of snacks and drinks for a March 8th festival. There's a $100 donation from the Northborough Junior Women's Club to the Harbinger in recognition of their great success at the Columbia Scholastic Press Association's forthcoming conference. And then the fourth one we have here is a donation to the Athletic Boosters Club through Gonk Patch. It's a pumpkin patch where the students do the hard work of the lifting and moving the pumpkins, and they accept a donation in response to that or for that work.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the donation from Northborough Youth Basketball Association in the amount of $5,000 to cover the cost of a presentation to students featuring Chris Herron. The approval of a gift card donation from Wegmans in the amount of $200 to Gonk Stage to help cover the costs of snacks and drinks for the March 8th, 2025 festival at Algonquin Regional High School. The approval of a donation from the Northborough Junior Women's Club in the amount of $100 to the Harbinger, and the approval of a donation from ARHS Athletic Booster Club through the Gonk Patch to the National Business Honor Society in the amount of $450, with our thanks.
So moved.
Moved by Paul.
Second.
Second by Sean. Any further discussion? All right, we'll have a roll call vote. Matt?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and next we're on to the superintendent's report to the committee.
And I'll turn it over to Principal Bevin.
So thank you, everyone, and good evening. And joining us tonight, so Amelia Sinclair could not be here, so pinch hitting for her is wonderful Madison Wilson, and she's going to take us through the student report for January.
Sure. So I just want to say hi, everyone. So first is just a little bit about what's happening in the student body. Recently at the beginning of January, we had the 8th graders from both Trotter and Milliken and Northborough and Southborough come and tour the school. It was the students that led the tours, and they were taken throughout the building. DECA went to their districts. We had a lot of winners. And then the weeks before midterm, we had multi-subject midterm tutoring. This was hosted by the Algonquin Writing Center in a multitude of different subjects, such as our languages, English, social studies, math. The end of semester was the 17th, and of course currently we're in midterms week. And then next Tuesday is the Triumph, which is the Music Honor Society, our induction. And then an overview of the work that the Student Advisory Committee has been doing. So over the past couple of months, we've been working to compile a list of policy-related opportunities for the student body, and these positions would not have to be elected positions. It's positions that students who are seeking to join a policy committee could join without being elected. We've compiled a list, which you can see here, of different opportunities for the students. And that's it.
What's Encompass? Do you know what the Encompass committee is?
Yes, so Encompass is the town-wide coalition for drug-free communities.
Oh, okay.
So it's all Southborough, Northborough, and I believe potentially Westborough is part of that.
Okay, any questions? Comments? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Done, Matt. Thank you.
Nice job stepping in.
So, would you like me to proceed on to the principal's report?
Yes, please.
There we go. So joining me, I'm going to bring in Assistant Principal Matthew Gitkin. Matt's going to give us an update on NEASC. It's the first opportunity I think Matt's had a chance to meet the committee. So Matt's off to a great start here in this school year, his first year with us here at Algonquin. So Matt's going to tell you about, I'm giving him the least exciting topic to report out on, and I'm just going to see how he does. So NEASC. All right, go for it, Matt.
Well, thank you for having me, everybody. So in March, we're going to be hosting a visit from NEASC. NEASC is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. It's an independent, voluntary, nonprofit organization that partners with school districts across New England in order to provide school improvement offerings, and primarily through their accreditation cycle. And so NEASC is going to conduct a 10-year cycle, and we are on the culmination of that cycle. We're in the 10th year of it. So this March, we're going to be having our decennial review. Primarily what the decennial review in March will look like will be a reflection back on a visit that we had 2 years ago, which was our collaborative conference visit. And at that visit, we, as a school, met with NEASC, and we decided upon a few priority areas for growth. These were things that we, in concert with them, felt were things that we could improve upon. So expanding upon our career counseling offerings, hiring Michelle Kalin's position that was mentioned before, that was a priority area for growth that we are making measurable progress towards. Achieving funding for and building the new athletic complex, that was a priority area for growth that we've made significant progress for, completed. And so we identified these 5 areas, and we've been working over the past 2 years to make measurable progress towards them. And so when they arrive in March, they're going to be checking in really primarily on those items. They're going to gather data on our progress primarily through looking at a report that we're going to be assembling. So we are going to present the actions that we've taken as a school and the ways that we think it's impacted the student body. But they're also going to be gathering their own information. They're going to be conducting classroom observations. We're going to be hosting them here in the building for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and they're going to be a part of our Buildings Day. So they're going to talk with our students, they're going to talk with our teachers, we're going to set up meetings with stakeholders, they're going to get like the whole Algonquin picture. We're going to do a student work showcase where we get to see all the wonderful work that students do here. And then they're going to provide us with a little bit of feedback on our progress that we've made. And this is really where a lot of the value of NEASC comes, is that we have 8 educators from other districts with extensive domain expertise in school improvement efforts who can come in and say, you know, these are the areas that we think you did a really great job on. These are places where we might aid you or support you in growth. And so that's really the hope for that March visit, is that we get a critical set of eyes and some more advice for accelerating our programs. Happy to entertain any questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. I was involved in an NEASC program review and preparing for it, and if others aren't, just curious, how thick is your report that you're preparing?
Well, it's growing every day. We're in the process of building it. This report for the decennial review is a little bit shorter than the ones that we did for the collaborative conference because it's a little bit more refined. So at the collaborative conference, it's much more expansive and looking at like a whole bunch of different items. With this, we're saying these are those 5 priority areas. These are the ways that we've made progress in each one of those areas. So we're going to write up a brief report on each area. It's like 2 pages each. And then there are some like standard indicators that they call foundational elements that they look for in every school, and we reflect a little bit upon those, but it's not like quite as expansive as the NEASC reports used to be. They've sort of trimmed and refined the process a little bit. Yeah.
That sounds much better.
It is a little better, yeah.
I had bet myself it was a couple hundred pages. I think ours were 300 for each report, something like that. It's crazy.
They have improved the process.
They have.
Yeah, well done for them.
I think I would just say that John and I are going to be the school committee representatives at the think it's a meeting on on March 10th.
That's correct, yeah, thank you.
Just, so if you have anything you need us to pass along, certainly feel free to let us know. I've been part of NEASC decennial visit. I haven't been on a visiting team, but I've been at a school where, we're showing student work and I've written reports, and it is, speaking from experience, it is a very extensive and time-consuming process. So, thank you very much for your work on that.
Can then you remind me, so I feel like I recall getting updates on this over a number of years because it's a long process. So just remind me, what's the requirement? Like so as an organization, we're required to do this every 10 years? And NEASC is an organization that does that?
It certifies.
Yeah, I would say it's not a literal requirement in the state, but it's a requirement to remain accredited, and every school, every high school, and every college does it. It's a lengthy process, and every school does it and gets a lot of value out of it. I think it used to be burdensome, and it's less so now, and we're seeing the benefits of this work. So as Matt rattled off a few of the things, like we've made a lot of progress really quickly, and this I think does catalyze that process. But it's not a DESE requirement, but it's an accreditation. It's a requirement to remain accredited. And I don't know of any high school in the Commonwealth that's not accredited, and they're the ones who do the accreditation.
But they do put schools on probation when they're concerned about some aspect of the school's process. And I know that sometimes that's done, I think, to kind of push schools in a certain direction, because there's concern about not having an accredited school, meaning students that are leaving your school, the coursework that they're doing might not be recognized as valid at organizations beyond high school. Or if your facilities are poor, perhaps you're not providing the experience that the students are deserving. So they use that as kind of a motivating factor to solve some issues that you might have internal to your building. So,
Just have a question. Where does NEASC get their money? Do we pay for the reporting process? Do we have subscription?
We pay dues each year to be part of NEASC.
I see.
And then we pay for also, we don't pay these individuals to come, but we cover, of course, the cost for their hotel and meals and things. And we give back by participating in our own. We go to other schools to do that same experience. So Matt participated in a review this past fall. I did one last year. So it's a little bit of a giving back process. But there's a dues. The dues cover, I think, the organizational demands that NEASC has to meet internally at their Burlington headquarters.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right.
I would just like to say that it is a worthwhile endeavor. That, as Matt indicated, it is an opportunity for a team of educators and experts to be able to examine our practices in our school and provide us with feedback. So it is another tool of accountability that is really important to the work we do here at Algonquin. So it is a worthwhile endeavor.
Absolutely. What I saw was when they came in, they were really able to figure out how this class ties into these objectives. They were more globally and holistically looking than from the bottom up, siloed in departments.
And just to be clear, the team that will be coming are comprised almost entirely of teachers and administrators from around New England. So these are our colleagues, and they are there to help. So it's been it takes a lot of effort, and Matt's been steering the whole process all this year, and we'll be happy when we complete the report and this team comes and goes, and we've had a good experience. But it's been enjoyable. It's been a lot of work, but I think we've gotten a lot out of it as well.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Matt. Thank you. Good night. So I'd like to just share a little bit about how we're using our time professionally in the last few months. We are doing a great deal of NEASC reporting. I know we just covered that at length, but I just want to spotlight our department head leadership team has been really kind of taken about a month now of just dedicating their time to collecting evidence, writing these reports, and doing that kind of work. So it's taken up a bit of a footprint. That is a cost to participating in NEASC. That is a little bit of an invisible one. It does have an opportunity cost to continue some of the other work that is important in a school. We're in the time period in the year where we spend about 6 to 8 weeks in giving exams for the mid-year period, which is what we're in now. And then we spend about a month examining those assessments and identifying areas for growth, instructional areas for improvement, targeting interventions for students. So the cold weather months are times where we spend a lot of time looking at our common assessments, how to improve them, how to use the data that comes from our common assessments to improve instruction. Over the course of the fall, I just want to kind of name, and some of this work continues, is we have a variety of programs that we, research-based programs we use to monitor and to improve students' mental health and wellness. One is Signs of Suicide, which we launched last year and we continue to do. That's in grades 9 and 11. We do an SEL screener for every student by one teacher. Each student gets screened each year by one teacher. We use that data to identify students who might be struggling, but also to identify some global trends we want to keep an eye on. And then we participate in SBIRT, which is a DESE requirement, but we're also participating in a study to see to determine the efficacy of SBIRT as a program. And then as well, and this is something I'm just giving you a little bit of preliminary information. Next month, I should have a more comprehensive report on. We're looking closely at how we'd like to respond to the state's change to reducing MCAS or eliminating MCAS as a graduation requirement. We still will give MCAS. There's still a lot of value in giving MCAS, but it is no longer a requirement for every student to pass to achieve an Algonquin diploma. So the department head group, once they're completing their NEASC work, we will generate a recommendation for this committee, probably for the February meeting, about how we want to meet the competency determination demands that now we have localized control over. In our last meeting, Mr. McGowan, Assistant Principal McGowan, had presented some information on class size. And Mr. Covino, you had located or noticed that there was a little bit of murky information in there because some data was kind of incorporated into that table that made it a little bit unclear. So I asked him to go back and to clarify things. What was a little bit unclear was that our classes where there's teaching assistants and where there's students taking independent studies were identified as their own singular section, and that kind of changed the complexion of the larger data, even though there aren't too many of those. It had a bit of a confusing effect. And additionally, some classes are mixed level classes. So you might have college prep students and honors students in a singular class, and in my mind, you really need to combine them into one raw number to see how many kids are in a classroom for a really classic view of class size. So what you see here is just a more ordinary, simpler and clearer view of what it looks like. And I think what you'll notice is the bell-shaped curve for most departments has maintained itself. So for example, like in English, you see the distribution of classes, class numbers between 1 and 10, very small class sizes, up to medium size, up to middle size, up to high, and up to very high, kind of outlays in a bell-shaped curve, which is pretty typical. So, so I apologize that data was a little unclear last time, and this should clarify it.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Gunn? I just have a question or maybe a comment. In the governor's State of the State address the other night, she made a comment that she's going to be having essentially like a graduation or she's putting together a commission or a council to study, I think, graduation requirements.
Yeah. Competency Determination Committee and graduation requirements.
So has there been any more information that's come out of that, like when they're going to do that? Because there's nothing worse than doing something that's duplicitous.
Yeah.
So you put a lot of effort into developing something, and then the state comes in and says, here it is, this is what you're going to do anyway. So I wasn't sure if there was any additional information that's come down from the governor's office related to what they intend to do with this.
No, and our approach is looking, as a short-term solution without a lot of effort in making significant changes. So that is what Sean has embarked on. That is what we'll recommend in the next month or two. And then secondly, looking at a longer-term solution and really thinking about what could be, and also being part of that state committee. Most likely there will be a statewide competency determination set, and if that is set, that is what we'll implement.
What I've been undertaking currently is reaching out to all the principals I'm familiar with, which is many, to see what they're doing and compiling a list of what is everybody doing, and everybody's doing mostly the same thing, very similar approaches, and it's aligning with where we were thinking anyway. So I don't want to come at this in total isolation and land in a place which is an outlier from our neighboring communities, and I don't think that will be the case. So there's about 20 communities that I'm familiar with, and we're probably going to be pretty close to dead center on what their requirements are, and these are all very high rigor and high achieving communities that we match ourselves against, and so that'll be part of my reporting out.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
So in your packet is also the enrollment report as of 12/16/2024, so no significant changes. And I'll turn it over to Becky for the budget reports.
Okay, good evening. So there is one function code in this month's monthly general fund report that is showing as overexpended as compared to the previous month, and that is our maintenance of grounds function code, and that is due to some of the work that we've been doing this past fall on the storage building out in the back by the athletic field. So I have accounted for where we have made up for those funds elsewhere within the budget, and that is included in your memo. In terms of the report that is dated December 31st, 2024, so this is actually the first 6 months, so we're halfway through fiscal year 2025. And to date, we have expended just over $11 million. We still have about $15.8 million that is encumbered for the remainder of the school year. But our ending balance as of that date was $650,995, or 2.34%. I think it's interesting that looking back at the prior 2 fiscal years that we are really within the same range. Last year we had 2.31% remaining, and the prior year we had 2.22% remaining. So I think that we are really on track in terms of our expenditures. I think that the biggest difference though in this report is you'll notice that there was a little bit more on the bottom line from the prior month. And this really is an impact due to a timing issue in our encumbrance for the Medicare in the previous month. So this is more reflective of where we expect to be. And so at that point in time, I would request that the committee vote to approve this report until audited, unless there are any other questions or comments.
One question, just for the motion, do we need to approve both the expenditure report and the use of a surplus to cover that item?
Thank you.
However it gets worded.
Yes.
So basically a motion to approve the budget line item transfer as it appears in the packet, approve the expenditure report until audited, and approve the statement of revenue until audited, correct? Or we haven't been to the
We
statement.
haven't done the statement of revenue, but if you want to do it,
Do you want to do it all together?
Yeah, do you want to just
Yeah,
speak to it
I
and
can
then?
just keep
Could you-
presenting.
could you-
Yeah,
that'd be
yes,
great.
okay. So the revenue report for December, you can see that we did receive the 2 towns' December 1st assessment payments. As I had mentioned at the previous month's meeting, it was delayed a bit due to the Thanksgiving holiday, the timing of everything. So we did see those funds in our bank account on December 2nd. So 1 day later than normal, but it was due to the holiday and the weekend. We continue to receive our monthly Chapter 70 and charter school state payments. Our investment income continues to be healthy. The athletic receipts that you'll see on this report are the winter sports athletic fees. And we also received our second quarterly payment of the special education circuit breaker funds for both tuition and also for transportation. But again, we are right in line. You can see we are just at the 50% mark in terms of where our estimated revenues are and what we have actually received to date. So there are no surprises with our revenue report.
Any questions or comments? All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the budget line item transfers as they appear in our packet. The monthly general fund expenditure report until audited, and the statement of revenue until audited.
I'll move.
Moved by, second by John. Any further discussion? All right. We'll have a roll call vote. Matt?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
And I am a yes, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
So also in your packet is the fiscal year 2026-2031 capital improvement plan that the school committee approved in December. Becky and I will be presenting the capital project plan to the town of Northborough on January 30th. And we do not have a date to present for Southborough as of yet, but most likely that will take place in February. Budget priorities are also in your packet. And lastly, this evening, I will present the FY26 revised preliminary budget. So it's hard to believe that we presented the budget in December. At that time, the budget increase was at 11.91%. We met with our operational budget subcommittee several times to get some feedback and ensure that we have clarity in presentation. So this evening, we'll present the work that we've done since the last presentation, answer any questions, and hopefully get some direction. The recommended budget is due at the end of February, so our meeting is, I believe, February 26th. So at that point, we'll have to present to the committee a recommended budget. So we have some time after this meeting to continue to work with the leadership team at the high school to bring forth a budget that the school committee can support. If it's the will of the committee, we'll skip some of the preamble slides and we'll go right to where we are in terms of the finances.
That is the will of the committee.
Okay. Reading the room. So
They're nice slides.
yes. So I think it's important to note that what we're presenting this evening is a level services budget. So we took a close look at class sizes, what we need to continue to support instructional programs for students. This is a level services budget with no increases added. In the presentation, you'll see what it would cost to incrementally add some of the budget priorities to this revised preliminary budget. So I'll turn it over to Becky to speak to some of the drivers and the financial details.
So really, the drivers have not changed since we presented to the committee last month. Obviously, transportation, both on the general education and the special education side, is a big driver in the budget that we're presenting tonight. We're also taking into consideration the fact that we are seeing a reduction of grants at the federal level, and we do anticipate seeing those further reduced in the coming years. We are also anticipating increases to our health insurance for both our employees, our current employees, as well as our retirees. We have had conversations with our healthcare consultant, and at this point in time, they do have a 10% increase in health insurance premiums budgeted for FY26. We are also looking at our instructional resources, both the hardware and also curriculum materials here at the high school. And looking at our facilities in terms of our building maintenance and some of the updates that are required as this building continues to age. And then lastly, we do have out-of-district placements that are driving this budget. We have a new student who has moved into our district with a placement that is a rather high-cost placement, and so that is one of the areas that we are seeing an increase.
And I think over the next month, we'll get better data. You know, with the governor's budget, we now have some preliminary benchmarks in terms of you know, regional transportation reimbursement, circuit breaker, Chapter 70. Those are important factors as we look at the budget. We also have more information about the retiree health insurance. We did receive the claims data for health insurance. That is favorable. We need another month's worth of claims data to really determine what the price will be. So hopefully we'll get good news over the next month in terms of where these budget drivers will land.
One other area where we did see an increase that since we've completed this presentation, we received more information on, and that's our assessment from Worcester Regional Retirement System. I think I had a 15% budgeted, and we're seeing about a 4% increase. So it's nice to see a favorable number. So again, just always keeping in the back of our mind what a 1% increase or 1% incremental increase or decrease would look like for the operational budget. So based off of FY25's number, a 1% increase represents $278,714. So again, when we started this process in October, we did receive requests from various departments and from the high school and the leadership team. And that initial request did come in at a 15.2% increase. From there, we did apply circuit breaker funding, that is our special education circuit breaker funding, in the amount of $917,574, which brought us to an 11.91% budget, which was what was presented at last month's meeting. And as Greg indicated, we have had many internal conversations. We have been looking, I think, at probably every area of this budget and have come up with an additional $1.8 million in reductions to bring us in this revised preliminary budget at a 5.42% increase. So that represents a $1.5 million increase over FY25's budget.
I would also add that we've been meeting with each of the towns to better understand the town budget landscape. So we've had several meetings. I think one of the points that we keep hearing is that if you took all of the budget increases from each of the departments and the regional school district, that we'd be over the levy capacity in each of the communities, which would require an override. So obviously the initial budgets from each of the departments need to be fine-tuned. The goal was to not use levy capacity at a rate that would expire next year or even this year, that it would be in FY28 that we would lose the levy capacity, which then would result in overrides to pass our budgets. So the town economic landscape also is a factor when we look at these budgets.
So this chart is one that we wanted to really demonstrate to the committee, I think, how the reductions did occur over the past month or so, from the preliminary budget to the revised preliminary budget. And I think the four main areas where you're seeing some reductions are, first of all, with our contractual obligations. In the in the preliminary budget, it was a 7.37% increase, and now it represents a 1.47% increase. The next would be with our maintenance and custodial supplies, where we were seeing a 24% increase, and now it is a 10% increase. Also, our teaching and learning supplies, we have had internal conversations and looked at some of the materials that were being implemented and came up with a more phased-in approach. So that is now a 74% increase as compared to an 89%. And then also our tuition, for our out-of-district student, and I will explain how we are now at a negative compared to our preliminary budget for the tuition on the next slide. So we also wanted to show you where some of these significant budget offsets were coming from. These don't represent all of them, but these are really the main offsets for the FY26 budget. The first area is there are 2.8 FTEs that will not be replaced as a result of retirements this year. And then we are also looking at some additional reductions of 1.6 FTEs within the district. We have not finalized those positions. We're having conversations with Sean and his team, but we have some theories in looking at the class sizes where those reductions can come. We are also planning to utilize $500,000 of FY26 circuit breaker. I think the committee understands the way that we utilize our circuit breaker is normally we are using the prior year's funding that we receive in the current fiscal year. So for example, in FY25, we're receiving the money that we received in FY24 towards our special education tuition. So this would be using the money that we're going to receive next year in the same year that we're receiving it. We have looked at our student population. We have some students who are aging out, and we also know that in FY27, we have more students who are aging out as well as this new student who has moved into our district. So we feel that using the funds in FY26 to help offset those additional costs will not put us in a harmful place in FY27. We're also hoping that as a result of going back out to bid for transportation, that we will be able to realize savings of about $200,000. We're also applying one-time funds. Last year, we did receive additional funding from the state for our emergency assistance for the family shelters that were set up here in Northborough. We received $104 per student. We do have those funds available to us, and so we intend to utilize $100,000 of those funds in next year's budget to offset the FY26 budget. And then lastly, we are going to be phasing in the mathematics curriculum implementation. So we have made some reductions to those curriculum resources. We do still intend to implement new curriculum in mathematics. However, it will be a phased-in approach.
I have a question, Becky. You said district earlier, but this is specific to the region, correct?
Correct.
So the 2.8 retirements, FTE retirements that won't be filled, are those teaching positions? Are they support positions? Are they combinations?
Teaching positions.
Teaching positions.
So one of the strategies has been, as we have reduced our student population, that when we have retirements through attrition, not filling those positions. So Principal Bevan and the leadership team looked really closely at class size policy and where class sizes are. And the question is, are we within class size policy with not filling these positions? And we are. The 1.6 FTE reductions, so that is a combination of what we believe potentially tutor positions and ESP positions, looking at our staffing requests.
So, if for the ESP positions, is it believed that we'll be able to meet the requirements of the?
Yes, so we
those
looked at
reductions?
IEPs and
changes.
service delivery grids and the population, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions on that slide?
Okay. We also wanted to show the committee as well as the community really how the FY26 budget is represented by various categories. And you'll see that really the biggest budget drivers or the biggest increases or portion of this budget are our contractual obligations, so that includes all of our salaries. Also insurance is about 14%, which is our health insurance. And then you'll also notice that we have retirement programs and Medicare. So really those 4 areas combined make up the largest portion of the budget, and those are all related to employees and employee benefits. And then the next highest area really would be our transportation costs, where that is now approaching about 8% of the operational budget. So we also wanted to provide the committee with some options, because there have been conversations about various, I think, items that are on the school committee's priorities list in terms of addressing communications, and also looking at some funding for some innovation within the school. And so the projected cost for the communication is $70,000, and if we were to add that back to the FY26 budget, that would increase the budget by an additional 0.25%. The innovation funding, we were projecting at $30,000. That would be an increase of 0.11%. And then to restore a 1.0 FTE would be a 0.3% increase to the budget. So those are just some options for the committee to think about as we go through this budget process. So just
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you specify the restoration of the one-time, or the 1.0 FTE, what that is?
Yeah, so we're still having conversations as a leadership team with Principal Bevan about which department he'd restore that position to. And that's looking more closely at the data, having conversations with department chairs and class sizes. So the 3 departments, Sean, would be math, history, and science.
Yep.
Of which one relates to the 2.8 returns?
All 3 of those relate to one, of the 2.8, one is math, one is science, and 0.8 is, one is math, one is history, and 0.8 is science.
Yeah, and I bring it up just because I think there was a point in time, and I think it existed in one of our documents when we had the draft.
0.2.
Yeah, right, and it was included, and so we took it out because we said that just the meeting class sizes is just a general requirement and desire of the committee. And so at present, these are not in the budget, they're out of the budget. And then, so may I then ask also, so of the other priorities, there's the $225,000 associated with the tech. Is that still, so as we contemplate, like, let's say we take out, or we leave out these items, will we still put forward the 225,000, or is that?
So that is through the capital funding, so that would be an additional assessment. So that is included in the assessment calculation that we plan on moving forward with the entire budget.
But you're going to the towns on those.
So, correct. And it's up to the voters to decide at the town meetings.
Great.
I did see in the line items, that there was a different technology line item, I guess, that went from an 80K increased to about a 19K reduction. What was that for?
So that was a combination, I believe, of using the E-rate funding. So John Parent did calculations around what we were going to receive for E-rate funding. He held off on E-rate purchases for this year because he felt like what was submitted was not actually what we need, so we paused. He's going to be submitting E-rate funding to fund some of the technology purchases, and that is offset by $60,000 on that line item.
So, my point of view, I understand what you're solving for, and I think a lot of work has gone into it, and I appreciate that. I'd be very disappointed if we can't find a way to get these line items back into the budget. I probably could move off of communications, but I think the environment we find ourselves in right now is all the more reason why we need communications to explain the decisions that we're making to hopefully get the funding that we need. Listening to Alyssa earlier today, I think that's precisely why we need the innovation funding, to provide department chairs to bring forward good ideas that would allow however we choose to let, Sean and his team govern the use of those funds to make sure that teachers have access to funds that allow for better experiences. So, as it presents here, it's a percentage of the budget, so I feel like we should be able to find it, but I get the challenges that you're solving for.
Yeah, and I would share that, with new information, the information we received today, we're getting, from the governor's budget, more regional transportation. We use 84% regional transportation reimbursement because that was the known number from last year, so we just rolled it up. The minimum, the state aid, we used last year's state aid, Chapter 70 funding. We now know that we'll get that plus $75 per student. So that's another funding source that we weren't aware of when we looked at this. So we're confident that there'll be space to be able to implement a combination of these, either 2 or 3 or all of them, with better data.
I guess my question would be, would you want direction from the school committee on prioritizing those 3 things?
Well, let's give it anyway. I mean, I think the innovation funding is a no-brainer. I mean, it's only $30,000, and as Matt said, who knows what it might create in the future. Communications, I mean, we've been talking about this forever. We have these workshops with Tony Bent every year now, and what's the probably #1 topic is communication. So I think it's time we did something about it. The FTE, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, if you can make the numbers work, given reduction in class sizes, I mean, the student population and the class sizes are okay, then I think I might be able to live with that one. I'm not exactly encouraging it, but.
So, I agree with Paul, except for perhaps on the last point. I think you probably should get some more math teachers. So just from what I understand, just math seems like it's a hot commodity. It seems like there's a demand for those. To have more of them would be a good thing, so that when they do quit or they go on work break or whatnot, it strikes me that we need to do something about them.
I will say just to that, I was impressed with the class sizes for the math department. I was pleased to see that they tended to trend on the lower ratio side, which I thought was good. And I would be curious to see if those 3 retirements aren't filled, how much that really does shift those numbers. I mean, they might stay within policy, but how is that going to? What is that impact really going to be?
Well,
and when you
is another potential metric that we should be seeing is how many times the class person isn't there and the kids are actually in the auditorium. Right. So in other words, when you don't have a substitute, that would be an interesting metric for this committee to see, as to sort of when it's, because maybe we haven't, and maybe it hasn't been clear, but there is a situation where substitute teachers aren't always available, and when that happens, kids go to the auditorium or they go to the cafeteria, and it's a study hall. No, you can't say study hall, it's something else. But I guess my point or observation is it'd be interesting to know where those are most impacted.
I'm not sure that addresses the substitute situation.
I think we can definitely provide data, because this is the work that we did behind the scenes to look at. Without these 2.8, what do class sizes look like? So we definitely can provide that data. That's something that John and the team really look closely at. I think also we can look at our building-based subs. So we have dedicated building-based subs. And look at the utilization. We can look at the average daily attendance. How many subs do we have on an average day? We did go through a stretch where our building-based subs were sick, and our building-based subs were out, which created another challenge, but we can provide some data around that, so you have good data
So
making.
that's not gonna solve the problem? Okay,
But I think looking at the data is really important, the building-based subs. Do we have enough building-based subs to make sure that classes are covered and we're not bringing students to the cafeteria, that a substitute can continue, and a building-based sub who knows our system, who knows our kids, who's part of our community, can have continuity of learning for our students.
And as far as it relates to, if we were to restore one or more of these, we would look at the real impact of losing a 1.0 teacher is either that class sizes go up or that you lose some nice to have things like elective courses that might be low enrollment but really good experiences but with low numbers, so you restore some of those sections back into your non-elective portions of your academic program in each of either of those departments. So, or it's a combination of those things. So some, those are the the places where the experience of the student is impacted by reduction is class sizes, of course, which is not a surprise, but also you might lose some nice to have electives offerings, which that's a real strength of our school and our program, but it's important to meet the most immediate and graduation requirement needs before you look to meet elective interests.
To John's point, I think there was a discussion at an earlier meeting about the sub rate. Has that been discussed any further in an effort to get more per diem subs in?
We've had some internal conversations. We also did a survey of substitute rates. I think so that's data we have. I think increasing our sub rate would be helpful in terms of securing subs. One thing we do different than other districts is we have building-based subs. Yeah. So we have dedicated substitutes for our schools, not just here at Algonquin, but across our 9 schools, who are committed to us every day, and we have that consistency. So I think it's a combination of looking at what their pay rate is, and looking at the daily rates, and looking at, do we need another building-based sub added to make sure that when we look at the average daily attendance of our faculty and staff, we're meeting the needs and not falling short in terms of making sure students have continuity of their classes.
What's that current daily rate?
Ours is 105.
Mm-hmm.
I think the average rate is anywhere between 110 and 115. And there are some districts that are outliers. For example, Hopkinton, I believe, is 130. And there are outliers in the other direction where they pay less than 105.
Do we know if the 130 in Hopkinton works? If they're,
I mean, we can ask. I mean, I haven't talked to the high school principal, but John, you can reach out to him.
Yeah,
ask,
friendly with the principal over there. I can speak.
I think in general, we're finding less people interested in substituting.
Yes.
So, but obviously, if you have a choice of making 105 in Northborough, Southborough, or 130, and money is,
is that how it works? I mean, are we basically competing for the same people?
Basically.
So an individual sub may work for multiple districts?
Yes. I think one of the challenges we have too is we don't have an automated substitute system, which we're working on implementing. So where a substitute can basically log on to an app in another district and check off, oh, I want to sub on these days, and there's a flow through of information back to us. They basically have to we call them, have a conversation, do you want to sub today? It's still archaic. So we are in the process of implementing a substitute system where it is automated, and that has been feedback from our substitutes that without that, they'll just check buttons in other districts and sub there.
Is the software we're exploring here ready? Is it ReadySub?
It's a
It is
power.
ReadySub.
Yeah.
There's lots of them.
The school district I work for uses ReadySub, and it is very convenient for substitutes. Because they get, as soon as there's an opening, they get a phone call, they get a blast, phone call blast.
Use a smartphone.
We have a profile of a graduate, but what's a profile of a sub? Who are you looking, besides a warm body?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is the strategy around having building-based subs dedicated to us because they're members of our team. They're members of our community, so those 3 substitutes show up every day. They know the kids, they know the people. So, we look for people many people who've retired. So former Algonquin staff, faculty and staff who are subbing for us, retired educators, or we're looking for a person who is, newly graduated, new to education, who we want to maybe see in action, get a sense of what their work ethic, their quality is. So those are the 2 profiles that we're seeing.
What's the minimum age that you would have them, if they're a recent 22, 23-year-old, that seems young to be tossed into a group?
Yeah. So recent, the youngest age of a graduate is probably 22, 23.
Okay.
We do have some like day-to-day subs that are college students, but generally, I think, and Sean could probably speak to this, they're probably placed more in like an ESP role versus a classroom teacher role.
That's correct.
And so that way, maybe the ESP could step into to the teacher role instead.
What does ESP stand for?
Education Support Professionals, so our paraprofessionals.
Do we provide any direction on that? Do we need to? Sorry.
Yeah.
So we heard definitely the top 2.
Yeah, I'm with Paul. I think, innovation funding, the communications is important, and the FTE, if that's something that we absolutely have to do, but I think the innovation funding should be our number 1 up there. Any other input on that, or dissent?
Quick question, how different is the pay for a substitute to what ESPs get?
So
The ESP salary range, I would say, is probably mid-20s to mid-30s, depending on how long they've been with the district. Probably about $24 an hour to about $35 an hour.
So they could be substitutes, actually kind of earn.
So they're making
Much
about
of the same,
$180 on average to $225 a day as an ESP.
And if they are working as an ESP, in their contract, they will, if they step into a teaching role as a substitute, they will receive an additional stipend for that.
So in conclusion.
So the revised preliminary budget that we are presenting to you tonight is $29,382,156. That is a 5.42% increase over FY25's budget, and it represents an increase of $1.5 million. In terms of our next steps, so we are tonight presenting the revised preliminary. At our next meeting, we will have the recommended budget for you to review. We will continue to have internal conversations with the leadership team as well as the operational budget subcommittee. And then we anticipate over the coming months that we will be meeting with the 2 towns' financial advisory committees as well as their capital board, planning boards. And all of this will culminate in the 2 town meetings in April.
And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments?
Yeah. I think I saw in the packet that the towns are asking for increases between 3% and 4%.
Yes.
Is that a change? I thought it was more like 4 to 4.5 last time we heard.
So when the towns look at the regional budget, they're talking about assessments. So when they're talking about a 5% increase, they're talking about what their assessment of the Algonquin budget is. So you know, I think that we look at it differently. We look at what do we need in aggregate for a budget, and then letting the assessments kind of play out. We don't control that with it, except using so I think the 5% was, you know, definitely from Southborough was what their projections were. And then in Northborough, you know, I don't think they were as firm in terms of their assessment projections. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. It's complicated, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, so they just care about what their portion of this budget is and how
Right.
much it's going to go on.
That's out of our control, really.
And that's, you know, primarily out of our control. I think the committee's job is to create a aggregate budget that meets the needs of the students, the faculty and staff, and then let the assessments follow suit.
Which now I have a question, because I still find myself
Yeah.
confused about the capital that we've now essentially committed to trying to get 400,000 or some more amount every year. Doesn't that go into the assessment, or is it it gets presented as a separate warrant item, or?
So it does get included in the final assessment that encompasses capital and the operational budget. When the towns are looking at their assessment increase, or they're looking at our budget, not the capital assessment budget. So they're still
So it
looking at
does
it
get
different,
presented
separate.
Because they also have to look at our debt assessment too. So
Yeah.
we're assessing them on like the operational side, we're assessing them on the debt that we have for both the building and also
Oh, that's a good
the
reminder,
athletic
yeah.
field as well as the capital. So there are 3 portions to the assessment they receive.
You had mentioned the 2028. There's probably no way to project this, but I mean, there's been a steady uptick in the increase every year. I mean, obviously inflation's leveled a bit, but are there forecasts that eventually we're gonna kind of plateau here, or is this
I mean, the challenge is, yes,
We're not gonna
inflation
have-
has moderated, but the budgets moving forward from the increased inflation rates are now part of our budget.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they fell back to pre-pandemic rates. They're now part of our budget.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking, we'll have a transportation fixed cost for the next, hopefully, 3 years, so that won't be, that's, out-of-district placement is always a driver, but never can be figured out. It's the health insurance and contracts that, I guess, will be a little bit more stable. I'm thinking in terms of when we talk about town and community looking at the budgets and, you know, maybe being able to, like, we'll have a little bit more predictability in the next coming years, I'm thinking.
Yeah, and I think the most volatile part of our budget really is special education out of district. So that for this year.
And transportation this year,
and
just because of the
transportation.
unknown.
The reality is, looking forward, Proposition 2.5 and having excess levy capacity is not sustainable.
Right.
That it's amazing that both towns have been able to keep excess levy capacity in their budgets this long. Proposition 2.5 is dated and no longer supports kind of dollars for education. So either in FY '27 or FY '28, we're going to be looking at bumping up against that levy capacity and having to look at potentially overrides to support the town and school budgets.
Okay. Thank you.
The forecast does not look good.
Any other questions or comments on the presentation? Well, thank you very much for your hard work in getting this put together, for sure. All right, moving on. Old business, there is none at this time. Policy development for and/or distribution, none at this time. And at this time, we'll have a second public comment, audience sharing, if anybody is interested. Anybody from the committee? All right, hearing no public comment, personnel.
So in your packets, the personnel report, we have a few shifts. More appointments and resignations, which is great news. Juliana Silva, who was an admin assistant to one of our assistant principals, actually has been hired as our administrative assistant to student support services. So we were fortunate enough to have her now work at central office. Jackie Garvey, who left us a year ago, Sean, actually decided that she really loved working for us and actually returned. So it actually worked out well for the high school and the district office.
She required very little training. She had done
Yes.
that job for 2 decades.
That's great.
Happy to have her back.
Thank you. Sean, did I miss something?
I don't know, did we do the revenue?
We did the statement.
Okay, we did all those, okay, because I remember we.
All right, communications, there are none at this time. Approval of bills and payrolls, that's done online. Agenda items for next month, the FY26 recommended budget, the multilingual learner presentation, food service management company RFP timeline in February, and the world languages department presentation in March. If you have anything else you'd like added to the agenda?
I had sent an email suggesting and spoke last month about having an update on wellness initiatives. In particular, there had been a new hire of assistant principal who was skilled in mindfulness, and how is that rolling out, please?
I don't know, maybe including that as part of principal's report in some fashion?
We could do
I
that.
appreciate that, Chuck.
Sure.
All right, any other items, Matt?
Does it need to be next meeting at some point, another school security update, which I think we need to do an executive session?
All right. Not hearing anything else. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Paul,
I'll second that.
a second by Kathleen. All right, any discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Matt?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. We are adjourned at 8:13. Thank you very much.
The whole hour.